episode, I promised to show you my Witties, all three of them. Well, at first I only had two, and even though there's some pretty big ones, so big that Elvis even had one of them, I just couldn't help myself and had to get a third one. Larry, what are you doing? I can't read the cue cards like that, Larry. You know? Well, don't do that. You're interrupting my introduction. That's what you're trying to do? Why? Oh no, that can't be true. No one else thinks that I'm talking about that. Get your mind out of the gutter, Larry. That's just my pet name for my WITCO pieces. Western International Trading Company. WITCO. Now see, don't you feel silly, Larry? Now where was I? Oh, yes, my Witties. I mean, my collectible WITCO pieces and why I love WITCO. But first, let's make a low carb on the high seas cocktail in my WITCO inspired mugs made by John Mulder and the crew at Eekum Bookum. Then I'll get right back to gushing over WITCO while I put a fresh polish on the Viking ship, add a leopard fur cover to the dragon couch, and frame my most recent addition, the Wahine. Since we're going to be buffing and polishing dark burnished cedar today, I thought that the Shingle Stain Cocktail would be appropriate for the job. So for today's low carb on the high seas version of Trader Vic's 1946 Shingle Stain Cocktail, we'll be starting with 1 ounce of fresh lime juice, 1 bar spoon of brown Swerve, 1/2 ounce of pomegranate liqueur, 1/4 ounce of Pimento Dram, 1/2 ounce of a Rhum Agricole, 1 ounce of a dark Jamaican rum. Today I'm using a blend. Shake. Pour into your selected vessel, add more ice to fill, and garnish with fresh mint and a straw. Now that we have our Shingle Stain cocktail, we can get down to buffing and polishing. But I do want to mention the product we'll be using, Howard's Feed and Wax, is not a stain. And it won't change the wood in any way other than rehydrate these quirky collectibles that were carved about 60 years ago. Just as I informed Larry, WITCO stands for Western International Trading Company, straight out of West Coast, USA. WITCO was established in the 1950s by cousins Robert Post and William Westenhaver, along with friend and business partner Robert Cookson. The trio imported tropical-themed items from Central and South America in order to quench America's post-World War II thirst for tropical and tiki-themed decor, which was driven by returning servicemen just like Westenhaver, who had experienced Polynesia firsthand. Then even civilians couldn't get enough of the popular themed bars and restaurants like Dom the Beachcombers and Trader Vic's. And just like the famous Dom the Beachcomber sign says, if you can't get to paradise, I'll bring it to you. WITCO did just that, bringing paradise and exotic escapism into homes of everyone from your Aunt Evelyn to Elvis. Yes, that Elvis. Soon after WITCO got its start at art shows, Westenhaver began adding his own cedar wood chainsaw carvings to the inventory, and they opened an official showroom in Washington State in 1958. As more carvers joined the company, WITCO had showrooms in most major American cities and even had listings in the Montgomery Ward catalog, allowing the company's sales to soar up to $15 million before its end in 1971. After 1971, furniture stores continued selling the back inventory, and Westenhaver continued carving and kept operations going on a smaller scale. Many music fans might have already seen the most famous and most well-preserved WITCO pieces at Elvis's Jungle Room at Graceland. And upon seeing pictures of Graceland, I couldn't stop staring at one room, the Jungle Room, and thought it was a delightfully tacky masterpiece of interior design. And apparently, so did Elvis. Rumors on the internet say that Elvis's father told him he'd just seen the ugliest furniture at Donald Furniture Company in Memphis, Tennessee. Supposedly, Elvis replied that sounded just perfect to him. So Elvis went to the store, which happened to be across the street from where Elvis practiced karate, and bought about $23,000 worth of WITCO furnishings and about 30 minutes. Elvis showed up presumably after his karate practice, still in his karate gi. According to the receipt dated July 8th, 1974, Elvis paid cash for the WITCO that was meant for the room he called the Den. The Den's nickname only emerged after 1982 when fans touring Graceland saw the floor and ceiling covered in green shag carpet, an indoor waterfall that took up an entire wall, and the exotic WITCO furniture covered in animal prints. Therefore, the Den became known as the Jungle Room. This is where Elvis liked to have breakfast and relax with his close circle of friends known as the Memphis Mafia. He even recorded his last 2 albums in the Den, amongst the WITCO pieces. I wonder if he turned off the indoor waterfall for those recording sessions. Either way, from the very first time I ever saw pictures of the Jungle Room as a kid, I was captivated by the bold choices that screamed, "This is where the fun happens." It was the type of space that made you feel transported. I immediately loved all of the green, which is obviously my favorite color. I always thought the indoor waterfall was the absolute coolest. There was nothing practical about it, and I loved that. I thought the furniture was kooky, quirky, exotic, and playful, never considering that I'd have some of my own one day. Time spent as a bartender and eventually learning more about tiki drinks led to Tiki Decor, which led to WITCO. I had a vintage mid-century wood panel bar with a green marble top that folded to a more compact size when not in use, which belonged to my late uncle. It sat empty for years in the corner of our mid-century home's formal dining room. I always had plans to someday unfold my uncle's bar, expose the beautiful green marble top, and put it to good use in my own home bar. But it just never seemed practical. So years and years later, when the WITCO Dragon Couch popped up on my Instagram feed from a local vintage market, the visions of the Jungle Room flooded my memory again. But I dismissed the thought as it just didn't seem practical. What would we ever do with a giant wooden dragon couch? Where would we put it? But I still had to drag Mr. Spooky to go see it, not to buy it, just to look at it. And upon seeing it, Mr. Spooky uttered the words that started it all. What if we turned the dining room into our home bar, like a tiki lounge? Right on the spot, we started plotting and planning. We could put our large, rarely used dining table and chairs into storage, finally unfold my uncle's bar, and the dining room was already painted a coincidentally similar shade of green that I had spied in pictures many years ago. It was all coming full circle. The next thing I knew, Mr. Spooky was buying the WITCO Dragon Couch for me, for us, for our newly conceived home tiki bar, which I'd eventually name the Sunken Compass. The couch was newly reupholstered in a period-appropriate earthy golden fabric with a sturdy, somewhat textured nubbiness to it. But I've always wondered if it ever sported a furry animal print. Since it now lives in a home bar with a parrot and an adorable dog who is very generous with his slobbery toys, and where many a sloshy tropical drink is served, I thought a removable, washable leopard print cover was a good idea, at least for the bottom cushions. The company who makes the furry throws was out of stock soon after I bought the first one, so as soon as they restocked, I got a second throw to cover the back cushions, and will add old-fashioned elastic sheet garters to help hold the throw in place and prevent it from becoming untucked and rumpled. Once I gave the Dragon Couch's deep groove grain of burnt cedar its first coat of Howard's beaten wax, I could recognize the style anywhere. The distinctive wide chainsawed cuts are unlike any other carving. It's rustic and completely dissimilar to chiseled wood. The deep cedar grain is made more pronounced by torching it black and wire brushing the charred embers to expose even deeper grooves. I can now spot a WITCO a mile away. There's a look, a feeling, and a vibe that is unmistakable. It's warm, solid, kooky, quirky, fun, impractical, and I love it. The Viking ship was my second piece, which also appeared on my feed from the same market. I custom built the A-frame to balance the massive size of the couch, created the pitch, and arranged the eaves to accommodate the frame of the Viking ship. Now I've added the Wahine, which will fill the perfect spot and keep me company next to the bar. I've seen similar pieces with and without a frame, so I cannot be certain if this one was ever framed or not. But the few framed versions I've seen are much more simple than the curved moldings used on the artworks like the globe and ships. I knew I'd prefer mine with a frame and a cotton canvas backing to match the gold hues of the couch. Originally, I thought I'd have to make the frame myself, and then I spotted the perfect size on a modern wall hanging at Goodwill. And to my surprise, the frame was actually wood, so I grabbed it, with fingers crossed that my guess measurements would be correct. And it was spot on. Just in case this piece was originally sold without a frame, I won't be permanently mounting it to the backing. And just like the others, it will get frequent wood quenching treatments. I mean, this is a tiki bar after all. And no one, especially not my beloved Witties, not even Larry, should ever go thirsty. And with that in mind, I hope you will enjoy a low carb on the high seas version of Trader Vic's 1946 Shingle Stain Cocktail, and let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Larry says it's great. Thank you for joining me today in the Sunken Compass. I loved being your haunted hostess. You were wonderful guests, and you're welcome back always. Farewell until next time. Cheers. Dang, I am putting this on the menu. It is delicious. Wow. In this episode, I promise to show you my Witties. All three of them. Oops. Well, get your mind out of the gutter, Larry. At a leopard leopard fur throw. At a leopard fur throw. That is so hard to say. And finish framing my most recent. I can't speak. The words are not coming out of my mouth. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments. That's what I'm trying to say. Low carb on the high seas version of Trader. Yeah. Farewell until next time. Woo. Cheers. Did I knock stuff over? Okay, we're good. As long as I don't knock this over. Wow.